Let's cue. Let's get in the mood here. Let's get in the
I
right
feel like I want a
mindset
cape
here.
after your.
Get your cape on.
Oh, we got. Yes.
Oh, I can feel Conrad turning into a jazz flautist.
Wow.
But Conrad, we'd love to explore how Conrad became Conrad and landed here on Lunch Hour Legal Marketing. Conrad, take us back. Where does your story begin?
Well, how far back do you want to go, Guy?
Conrad, where in the world did you come from?
Well, I came to Lunch Hour Legal Marketing from two hemispheres away. Back in 1979, our little family immigrated from Sydney, Australia to Princeton, New Jersey. One might think that's not much of a massive change, but it really was. I think the opportunity for people in the United States was just so amazing. And my dad was a very, very smart man. He came over here with a business and then rolled off and built his own entrepreneurial American dream. It's a very classic dream. I'm fully aware that I grew up kind of in this privileged opportunity because of my dad's hard work and kind of just basic raw intelligence. And I also recognize that as an immigrant, like in today's world, there's this big anti-immigrant sentiment. I'm super happy to share a positive immigrant story. It was also tough to be the weird kid who brought you try bringing a Vegemite sandwich to school at age 5. It's not an easy place to be.
So I know I was going to ask you about Vegemite, but for our listeners who are not informed, what is Vegemite?
Vegemite is a yeast extract that looks and somewhat tastes like if you put salt on tar on the road.
And it's very popular in Australia.
It is very popular, especially thanks to the Men at Work song. The British version is Marmite, which is garbage compared to Vegemite. But yeah, I ended up at Michigan in grad school, and which is where you and I presumably unintentionally met at some point in time. But
Go blue.
Go blue, baby. We're gonna win next year. We're gonna win the game next year. Brief aside, yes or no?
Yes, we're gonna win again.
I'm with you. All right.
So what were you studying back in Michigan?
So I went, when I got out of college, I went and worked for this guy who was the fourth generation in his business. And I really was completely directionless. My plans at the time were to do that job for 2 years and then go into the Marines. That's kind of what I wanted to go to OCS. And my now wife at the time, and I can share this story because I know she does not listen to the podcast. But my now wife at the time, who was also at the time my ex-girlfriend, was dating a guy who went to Cornell's Johnson School of Management, MBA program. And the guy who I was working for, who was not the best person in the world, also went to Johnson. And so I bought the Princeton Review Guide to MBA Schools, and I drew my line at Johnson, which I believe at the time was ranked number 9. And I looked at schools that were above that, which I know paints me in a colossally petty light, but that's what happened.
Or colossally ambitious.
That's fair. You know what? That is fair. I was the youngest person in my MBA class. And I think because of that, I was unbelievably intimidated by the rest of my classmates, but I also think I got more out of it than anyone else. So love the time.
So then you've got the MBA in hand. Do you go directly into legal, or where are you? Okay.
I had this great job that was for a terrible company, but it was, I worked for this very little company called Software Online. And what I did, I learned pay-per-click really, really early on. So we made this terrible software that would clean up your registry and it was probably available for free somewhere else. So like the business model,
You didn't put that in the ad copy though.
it was fundamentally flawed. And there were, I mean, it was like you needed to gargle bleach when you went home. And so, but I was there and I learned that people were putting in these error codes that they would get from their operating system, which at this point in time sounds ridiculous, but they would try and research these error codes. And so I could buy clicks on these error codes very, very cheaply because no one else was doing it. And then we could sell the software that probably people didn't need, which is really, really gross. And I hated myself for doing it, but I did get to learn kind of this concept of keywords and pay-per-click systems and bidding, et cetera, which was kind of fascinating.
That's still a thing, by the way, not necessarily on a direct bid, but people will host display ads on sites that have answers based on organic optimizations on error codes. So
this
you
this
pioneered
happens.
it.
I pioneered it, and bleh, hot shower needed.
So eventually you got too disgusted with yourself.
I got hit up by a headhunter who was like, hey, I've got this company called Legal Brain, and would you like to interview with them? And I was like, okay, what's Legal Brain? I did a little research, and turns out that it was the founder of Zillow and Expedia had financed $3 million into Legal Brain. And my very close friend from the University of Michigan was the CMO at Zillow. And so I said, hey, Mark, I've got this interview with this company that is invested in by Rich Barton. And can you tell me what you think I need to know? So I brought over a 6-pack of beer to his house, which we split while he taught me 2 hours of SEO, which was basically all you needed to understand SEO back in 2006. So I went into the interview the next day and I looked like a genius because nobody knew anything at the time. So it really was this kind of 6-pack of beer that got me the job at Avvo, for which I was bluntly underqualified for, but no one knew anything about it. And the cool thing for me, Legal Brain became Avvo, and I was there before we launched. I think I was the 6th person that was hired. The community, because it was venture backed by Barton, we were able to get advice and work from some of the people who had made a fortune on the internet learning the early stages of SEO. So these people mostly sold either pharmaceuticals. Well, it was pharmaceuticals, specifically Viagra, through Canadian companies into the US. And what happened back in the day, if you go that far back, the Google algorithm, and this was called the Google dance, the Google algorithm was fixed. It wasn't constant like we know now. And so what would happen is the Google algorithm would change. They call it the Google dance, and there used to actually be a dance called the Google dance. And if you have one of the Google dance t-shirts, the really, really old school SEOs think you're really, really cool. But they would change the algorithm, and then a new person would be number one for Viagra Canada, right? And that person would make a fortune until the Google dance happened again. So like these are the people that I got to learn from. Really, really amazing people. And no one understood anything about legal except for Tim Stanley at Justia. And so I was able to take Avvo and really, I mean, we won within, I want to say, 2.5 years. We went from Legal Brain to the number one legal directory on the web, which at the time, the number one legal directory on the web was the number one resource for people on the web because legal directories dominated and many, many firms didn't have websites, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I did to get into legal and to get into SEO. It was quite awesome.
And while you claim not to have known much about SEO, you did know enough about PR to be able to generate one of the best link building campaigns in legal of all time.
So this was, and I don't know why this is a really twisted thing, but one of the things that we did, we were sued, I believe, 3 days after we launched by John Henry Brown, a Seattle-based lawyer who has represented some famous people. I think he likes press more than he likes going to trial. But my job became, and we were rating lawyers, right? So scale of 1 to 10, we showed your disciplinary history, which had all, beforehand been hidden. And so a lot of lawyers hated me, right? And they hated Avvo, and a lot of them still hate Avvo, although it's kind of fallen off to a bit of obscurity. But my job is, like, I was the only marketing guy. And I got kind of baptism by fire on PR. I just used to poke the bear, and I would talk to people who hated us. I would talk to people who wanted to sue us. I made it sure that everyone knew about the John Henry Brown lawsuit. And it was so much fun to get people going, because this is early days of blogging, right? And so, like, I knew that if I could get Kevin O'Keefe, for example, to blog about the Avvo lawsuit, all the other bloggers would learn about it, and they would want to blog about it too. And if they didn't, I would poke them to make sure that they knew that if they wanted to talk to me, I was available to talk to. And it was really, really amazing link building. And that link building strategy was one of the things that got Avvo off the ground so quickly. I mean, it was the thing that got Avvo off the ground so quickly.
Now, Avvo wasn't the only major logo that you worked for in digital, though. You were at Urban Spoon as well, weren't you, for a period of time?
Urban Spoon. This'll be great. I think I'm contractually not allowed to tell this story. Brought it up. But I don't.
Is Urban Spoon still around?
No, it's not still around. It was sold. Urban Spoon. So I left Avvo for about 6 months, and I was excited to get into the restaurant industry. Urban Spoon was a directory, and if you are 40 or over, you will remember the early iPhone ads when they put the accelerometer in the iPhone. They needed something that functioned when the iPhone moved. And Urban Spoon had this little slot machine action where if you shook your phone, up would pop a different random restaurant near you, right? And so Urban Spoon got all of this unintentional advertisement piggybacked on the Apple iPhone. And so it became a pretty well-known restaurant directory. So I went there for a little while. At the time I came on, I remember the guy who hired me resigned the day after I started.
That's fun.
And that was not good. It was not a good start. And it went from that was the good times. It went bad from there. Urban Spoon really wanted to replace OpenTable as a reservation site for high-end restaurants, right? And OpenTable was making a ton of money. It was venture-backed. In fact, it was venture-backed by Bill Gurley, who was also on the Avvo board. So when I went to Urban Spoon to try and compete with OpenTable, I remember Bill sent me basically a "go fuck yourself" email. I'll never help you again.
Making friends everywhere you go.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, the problem, of course, with Urban Spoon was 98% of the traffic was SEO generated, and 98% of that traffic didn't look at high-end restaurants that had a reservation function. So like it was destined to fail, which I, in my very low EQ fashion, was very clear about pointing out to the management. And I got fired. So, I think I remember it was on a Friday. I did a quarterly review. I lasted, I think, all of 6 months, but I did a quarterly review of how our attempts to move into the OpenTable market had gone. And at the bottom of each slide, I had a stamp of the word "failed," right? Because we had operated poorly. And I know as an interview, this would be a bad example to be trashing your previous employer, but this was a disaster. So I got fired, and I had a couple of clients I had a couple of people that I knew in the legal space from all of my work at Avvo. They asked me to come on board. I created a company called Atticus Marketing, which is still the legal name of Mockingbird. And I started doing consulting, and then it just kind of took off from there. And I never intended to create an agency. In fact, I never wanted to work at an agency. And yet here we are. Atticus started in 2013. And so we're 12 years in at this point in time.
And then I had around, I don't remember what year it was, had been hosting Lunch Hour Legal Marketing. And I couldn't think of a better person to have come join me on Lunch Hour Legal Marketing than Conrad Saam.
I will tell you this. Your largesse was still surprising to me when you offered the co-host option to me. That was unbelievably gracious And I'm super grateful for you having done that, because you know what? We get to talk at least every 2 weeks. Even if we don't see each other at conferences, you and I are on screen every 2 weeks, and it's awesome.
And well, again, don't give me too much credit here. Don't give me too much credit. And obviously I'm, I've known you, and we've been living a parallel journey in this legal marketing agency owner thing. But, so much of it was because again, to the testament of the show, when we're coming in here as two competing agencies, friendly competitors, that are, sharing this inside kind of perspective, to me, that was the whole genesis of this was, hey, and really, to give you credit, it really came from Bedlam. Bedlam is really what inspired me to be like, hey, you know what? He's onto something here, because you're getting these two different perspectives from two different agency owners on the inside of the agency world. Now, look, again, there's also some uniqueness here because the way that we are aligned on so many of the things that we talk about, and we don't always agree on everything. But anyway, I'm super grateful that you accepted, and there's the story for whoever asked on YouTube. That's how we came to Lunch Hour Legal Marketing.
I think we don't agree on tactical things, but I think the way we think about the market and the way you're kinder than I am about this, but we hold the agency world in a level of disdain because it's well earned. I mean, that was one of my early learnings at Avvo, was there are businesses that are predicated on preying on this stupidity, or not stupidity. I don't even say ignorance, lack of knowledge of law firms. And that's still out there. And I think that drives you and I. I mentioned at the beginning, my dad started a business. The worst thing, one of the least American things you can possibly do in your big business is build your business model on screwing the small business, right? And there's a lot of that. It is still going on. It changes flavor, but it's still there. And you and I have this shared animosity towards people who do that.
Yeah, and on the other side of that coin is we both hold lawyers in very high regard. I mean, I'm still a licensed lawyer, but I know one of your core values at your company is you love lawyers. I mean, we recognize the value of the work that lawyers do for society, and I think that comes out in a lot of how we talk about legal marketing and the types of firms that we choose to work with, and yada yada yada. So there it is, Conrad's origin story, how he landed at Mockingbird. Or how he landed at Lunch Hour Legal Marketing also. And so now we will forever be emblazoned upon the internet servers of how we got here. And grateful to you, dear listener, for joining us for this episode of Lunch Hour Legal Marketing. As always, if you just landed here and you have no idea what you're doing here, please do subscribe. If you're a regular subscriber and you're enjoying listening to Lunch Hour Legal Marketing, we really do appreciate hearing from you, whether you've got a topic for a show that you'd like us to cover, if you'd love to give us a review. We love hearing from you. Thank you so much. Until next time, Conrad and Guy, farewell.
Money makes a world go round. Money makes a world go round. Yeah, money make a world go round. Money makes a world go round. Yeah, money make a world go round. Money makes a world go round. Yeah, money make a world go round.